Good morning, everybody. David Shapiro here with another video. We are going to work on writing a novel. I think this is it. We're gonna finish this one. You can see the series here. Fine-tune GPT-3 to write a novel, part 1, part 2, and then part 3 is down here. This has been one of the most popular ones that I've done so far. It has 11 stars and 3 forks, so you guys clearly like this one. We're closing in on being done. Quick review for last time. We got all the way up to actually creating the fine-tuned model. So the model has been fine-tuned, and it was a $40 fine-tune. It was $38 and some change. So it was an expensive job. So it'll be a while before I fix the problems with it. It was 1.3 megabytes. But at the end of the last video, I tested it and it seemed like it was working. So let me go here and get the model name because we will need that soon. CD, let me make this bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Font 36. That's a little, well, no, you can see that just fine. CD Automuse, and then Python Finetune. There we go. There we go. Okay, so this last one should have been Novel Writer. Yes, fine-tuned model, DaVinci FT. There we go. And I know from previous work that when you do this, you need to change it from engine to model. So, like if you look right here, what you do is you change this from engine to model equals that. I'm not going to save this in this particular file, but I'm just going to copy this function out because we will need it in a minute. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so where were we? Where did we leave off? The problem, so here's a sample of the fine-tuning data. So Alice in Wonderland, chunk 11. Story so far. Alice falls down a rabbit hole and into the fantastical world, etc., etc. Alice decides to go into garden, but she forgets the key and can't reach it. Alice tells herself to stop crying, etc., etc. Okay, so this is not bad. Some of you folks have talked about like, oh, well, you don't need to summarize the whole novel up to a certain point. I disagree, because like, yes, when we're reading, we're focused on our current chapter, but when you're writing it, the reason that I want to have the summary of the entire thing is because with just the outline and the last chunk, GPT-3 will have no idea where in the story you are. So it's not just about information, it's about knowing how far along you are in the story. So I hear you. I still disagree. Now, what I did was I had this prompt that says summarize the passage very concisely, because what I wanted to do was every time we wrote one of these, I'd wanted to just summarize it down to 1 or 2 sentences, and it did a really good job of that. And then for every chunk that it wrote, we'd summarize it and put it into the story so far. And then once this chunk got too long, we'd summarize that chunk. Unfortunately, so here's chunk 11 and here's chunk 12. So this is too short. That's all there is to it, is we're losing too much information. It still seems to work, but I think for execution purposes, it'll be helpful if we make this a little bit gentler. So I wrote a new prompt that just says gently summarize this passage, a gentle summary. So let's take this and let me just show you what the difference is going to be. So let's go back over to our playground, and let's also grab our prompt. So summarize this passage very concisely. Passage. And then we go to the very end and we do concise summary. Okay, so you see, that wasn't so bad. Like this is actually better than what it resulted in the training data, because this training data is actually no, it's pretty similar. It's just the font looks like it's a little bit bigger. Yeah, okay. So it's pretty similar, but we lose a lot of the detail. And obviously we're going to lose some of the resolution. That's the point of a summary. So we want to compact it. But let's see what happens if we change it to this gentle summary. So by adding the adjective gently, or I guess ly, that's an adverb, gently summarize, and then gentle summary, we're basically saying like ease off the gas. Tone it down just a little bit. Okay, so then we say gentle summary. So that means be a little bit less aggressive when you're summarizing it. Oh, look at this. That's so good. Okay, that's getting pretty long. Okay, that was right at the end. Okay, so it was just over 256 tokens, so yeah, that's not bad. Let's compact this. Yeah, so you can see, well here, let's copy this out into Notepad++ so we can see that the gentle summary is 1,200 characters. So that's below the 1,500 character mark that we wanted to keep everything at. And then the what it was originally is 1,300. Okay, so maybe we need to do a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, because we would ideally want this like, because if you remember, oh whoops, the aggressive summary was much shorter. Okay, so let's do a little bit of prompt engineering. Let's see. Summarize this passage with moderate aggressiveness. With condensation. And so then we'll say moderate summary, because obviously like gentle summary was a little too soft on the corners. Okay, so this was 1,300 characters. Let's see if we can get below, because this was like 1,311 characters, and the goal would be to get down to like maybe half that. Okay. So the moderate summary, and then so let's go to here. Length 976. Okay, so that took it down by about just over 300 tokens. So that's not too bad. And then I guess what we can do is we can do this recursively. But yeah, so reducing it by, because 1,300 minus 300, do some math. 300. Well, let's see. What was it? Let's be specific. It was 1311 976. Okay, 1311 minus 976. So 335 divided by 1311. Okay, so that's 25% shorter. Not bad. But that's better than the 10 times shorter that the original prompt was doing. Okay, so I think we found our prompt, our gentle summary. So let's, summarize this passage with moderate. Yep, and then we go moderate summary. Okay, so basically, if I were to do this over, what I would do is, for summarizing the big chunks, I'd use this one. And then for making sure that the story so far wasn't too concise, I would use this one. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to incorporate this when we're writing the novel, and I'll use the same logic. Okay, so with all that said, I think we're ready to go. So let me open So writing the novel is going to be really similar to preparing the training data. So basically what I'll do is I'll just copy this and then I'll modify it. So I'll do this. Let's go ahead and save it so we get the right formatting, all types, and we'll do write novel.py. Here we go. It's getting real, folks. Okay, now we're not gonna do this. Summaries, that's fine. We need to, we'll need an outline. And we're going to be generating the summaries as we go. Okay. Oh, did I accidentally overwrite the thing? No, here it is. Okay. So we will, all right, so we'll need two GPT-3 engines. So this will be, we'll call this the Finetune completion. We'll get rid of the engine. And the tokens, we'll set that to 500 because we don't want to go any higher than that. Because that'll be 500 tokens is about 1,500 characters thereabout. Might be a little bit more. Let's cut that down to 400 because I don't want it to go overboard. Okay. So let's move this up a little bit. Because the GPT-3 completion, this is just your standard text DaVinci 02. We're going to use this with our summary prompt. Okay, so the outline will be, we'll just call this premise.text. And so what we'll do is I've already got a folder full of premises. And so what we can do if we want one, let's see, mystery. Tensions are high and the city is on edge. Okay, cool. So we'll just copy one of these out to the main directory and we'll just call it premise. So that's the file that we'll use to seed the premise of our story. Okay, so we got the premise. We don't need recursive summaries. We don't need the fine tune. We've already done that. Let's leave one of these open just so that way we can see kind of how it's going to go. So the premise will go here, the story so far will go here, and then we'll write the chunks. Now, if you watched the last video, this had a really hard time with a cold start, because if the story so far was empty, and the last chunk was empty as well, it didn't know what to do. So it became very clear that we're going to need to prime the pump by starting this with a different process. So what we're going to do is we're going to say... first chunk, well, actually, I guess first let's do some prompt engineering. So let's go open our premise again, and then go back over to GPT-3. So let's say maximum length 256. That's fine. Write the opening chapter for the following story. Premise. All right. Chapter 1. Let's see. It looks like it's just repeating itself. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is it's so fascinating because like if I fed it prose, it was really good, but if I ask it to write prose, it's really awful. Let's see. So let's try something new. And I remember I ran into a similar problem at the very beginning of this project. Okay. So premise. Yeah, and you can see it made a lot of mistakes. I wonder what happens. Let's do an older Curie. Or sorry, older DaVinci Instruct Beta. Right? Write a novel for the above premise. Oh, much better. Okay. Let's try. Well, here, let me copy this down just in case. And also, let's see if using instruct 2 works. So instruct beta seems to be more creative. Yeah, see, it's just copy pasting itself. Okay, so instruct beta is definitely where we're going to start. Let's see. Chapter 1. Oh, this is great. Okay, cool. I think we have our opening prompt. So let's do premise, and we will do premise, chapter 1. There we go. So we're going to say prompt first. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to use this prompt and the premise to generate the first chunk to get things going. Okay, so we've got our outline, and then our prompt will be open file prompt underscore first dot text, and then we're going to do dot replace premise with our outline. Okay, so that is going to be our first chunk. And then let's go ahead and do a... actually, I guess it'll technically be our last chunk. So we'll go ahead and use the same thing, equals GPT-3 completion prompt. So basically what that'll do is what these 2 lines of code do right here will do exactly what we saw right here. And it stopped at 256, so we'll do 500 tokens, because that will be, I think that'll be about right. Let's see how much 256 was in terms of characters. 644. Yeah, so if we double that, that'll be 1,300 tokens or characters or so, because we don't want it to go too far in one go, because one thing that GPT-3 does is it kind of tends to start hallucinating or confabulating if it runs too far. Okay, so prompt first, good. And then, let's see. Okay, so we've got the first chunk, and then the summary chunk. So the summary chunk, we're going to want to... yeah, okay, I think we're probably good. Now we're going to need to... This loop is going to need to be different. Okay, so once we get here, we're just going to do like, let's say 20 for I in range 0 to 20. So we're just going to do 20 iterations, and then we'll stop, because I don't want to burn all my tokens. So the reason I'm doing this and not another fine-tuning video is because I'm almost out of tokens for this month. Okay. So last chunk, and we should probably save this too. Yeah. Okay. Do I have a save function? I do have a save file. Okay, so let's do output. Actually, no, we'll call this the novel. Okay, so novel. And then each time we run, we get a chunk. we'll save it. So we'll do save file, and then how do I have this formatted? It is content and then file path. Okay, so last chunk, and then file path will be novel slash chunk001.text. Okay. And then the summary chunk, so we're going to go ahead and summarize this. But I think because all we need is the last chunk will generate the next chunk once it's populated. And that'll all happen here. Yeah. Because all we need to add to the summary chunk is the last chunk. Right. Okay, so I think that's probably fine because we've got last chunk, we'll summarize. Actually, no, I guess we do need a summary chunk going in. Okay. So now prompt equals open file, we'll say prompt summary text dot replace, and then the summary is chunk. Okay. Chunk. And we'll say last chunk. And we'll say actually we'll just say the summary so far. Summary so far, because that's the variable name that'll be here. Equals GPT-3 completion prompt. Okay, let's add a little bit. So we'll do prime the summary variable, and then we'll do prime the story variable. Okay, so last chunk and summary so far, that is going to be, so we've got the outline, we loaded that, right? So we load the outline here. So basically all we're doing is we're priming this input. So I probably should have explained that, because if you're watching, you're probably like, what are you doing? Story so far and last chunk. So we've got those three variables. That's what we need to put in. And then the fine tune, now we're ready for the fine tune model. So we're going to ask it to generate next chunk. Okay. So now that's what we do. Okay. And we saved it as last chunk. I in range 20. So actually we're going to start at 2 because we're going to be working on chunk 02 and I want to use that variable I. And let me just make sure that my Python logic works how I think it does. Range 2 to 20. Print. Print you as a list, damn it. There we go. Okay, so if I do print list range 2 to 20, it'll go 2 to 19, and I want 20 full chunks, so I need to go to 21. Okay, and that'll give me chunk 2, 3, 4, all the way up through 20. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with this, save it out, summary so far. That's good. Now, let's look at some of this logic. First, I guess we're going to need to load the full prompt. So prompt equals open file prompt underscore full dot text. So that's similar to right here. Outline, summary, and last chunk. So let's just copy this. So outline is there, summary chunk. So let's actually replace that with the correct name, summary so far, and last chunk. Okay, so on the first instance, the first time this runs, all these variables are populated. And then we're going to ask it to do this, the fine-tune completion, which will use my model here. Now, one problem that I'm concerned about is if the model isn't loaded. So we're going to do max retry. We're going to do 15, and we're going to wait 5 seconds between each one. So because 5 times 15, that's 75 seconds. Usually it doesn't take that long for a model to load. Actually, let's go ahead and do 20 retries. So basically what happens with fine-tuned models is that sometimes the API will unload the model and you have to wait for it to warm back up. And so basically what it's going to do is if it errors out, then I want it to wait and try again. So I'll have it sleep 5 seconds because if you just try every second, the API is just going to get mad at you. It'll say too many retries. So I'll wait 5 seconds, and then I'll retry up to 20 times for the fine-tune completion. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab fine-tune completion. And we're going to call this next chunk equals fine-tune completion prompt. And so that is going to be that. Next chunk is actually what's going to be saved as O2. And then once it's done, next chunk will become last chunk, but we also need to summarize it and add it to the summary. Okay. So let's go ahead and save file. And the chunk number will be here. Oh, I guess I need to go look at what I did for the file names. Yeah, get next chunk. So I'll just write a quick function to generate the file name. Oops. Def make file name. And so we're going to have n. So then we'll just copy this. And do number. It'll be chunk that. We can get rid of that, so it'll just be number. And I think we can just return. Yep, return chunk 00s. Yeah, so let's copy that. And then if it's in the hundreds, we only need 2 zeros, and if it's less than 1,000, because we're not going to do 1,000. Okay. But just for completion, because you should always, so here's a rule of thumb. If you have a function like this, it's best practice that it always returns something. So if it's if, else if, and then else. So finally, you just return. It'll be whoops. Here. We'll just remove all the zeros because that means that it is a 4-digit number. Okay, that's fine. So make file name. Save file. Novel plus make file name I. Okay. So we're going to want to save the next chunk actually. And you also want to save the next chunk because at the end, like we're not going to have another iteration to review the last chunk because the next chunk will ultimately be the last chunk one time. Okay, so now we've got next chunk is saved out to file. So now we need to summarize. So now let's do update the summary. And so we'll replace that with next chunk. And we'll do summary so far equals summary so far plus GPT-3 completion prompt. So now this is where if the summary is too long, we will we'll use this logic. So if summary shorten summary so far if it's too long. Okay. Actually, we'll leave some output. Shortening the summary. And again, remember, the reason that we want to keep track of the entire summary so far is just so that GPT-3 remembers where in the story we are. Okay, so this is going to be the gentle summary, because remember, the gentle summary just reduces the length by about 25%. And so then we say prompt encoding. I don't think we're going to need that because we're not using anything from so this line of code, I had it here because there's something funky in the files from Gutenberg where I needed to encode it to ASCII, ignore errors, and then decode it back to a string because it used some form of UTF-8 that GPT-3 was not happy with. It kept erroring out. But I don't think we need that. Okay, so the summary so far has been updated in the loop. If it's too long, so if it's 1,500 characters and we reduce it by 25%, so that's times 0.75, that'll bring it down to 1,125 characters. If this recursive thing works. And then I think we're just about done because after that, last chunk equals next chunk. So basically this says, okay, we're going to inch along, and so then the cycle repeats, and it'll be here. So the summary will be captured here. The outline isn't changing, and the last chunk, so what was the next chunk moves back, and now it becomes the last chunk, and now we're asking it to generate a new last chunk. And it will all stay there. And then let's get some output as we're going. So we'll say, I feel like, well, okay, so this is all going to get saved. All the logs are going to get saved, so I don't need to, we can go and review those in the GPT-3 logs folder. So this is, I recommend everyone do this. Just keep a GPT-3 logs folder, because then you can go back if something is happening that you don't expect. You can just be like, okay, what happened here? And I record both the prompt and the response. I used to try and record the settings as well, but I've found that was like, once you find the right settings, I don't really change them. Okay, we can close recursive summaries. We're done with that. We can get done with that. Prompt first. Okay, we've got that. We've got the premise. We don't need Alice in Wonderland. We don't need the moderate summary and the concise summary. Okay. Let's have a little bit of output as we go. Print last chunk. And then as soon as the next chunk is done, we'll do print next chunk. Wow, I'm nervous. Let's see if this works. Oh, man. Okay, Control Z to exit out of that. Python. Make sure that the my save file, novel plus. Okay, so it'll save it out as chunks. We'll go up to chunk number 20, and then we'll read them. Man, I'm like, actually, like, my heart's going. Like, this is exciting. This is one of the more complex projects I've done, other than invent a cognitive architecture. But I'm doing it live. Like, you guys have seen the whole process. Write novel. Watch it blow up. I probably fat fingered something. And then, okay. Oh, crap. I know what I did wrong. I used the wrong engine. Stop, 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 stop. We needed to change it to DaVinci Instruct Beta. Halt the presses. Okay. All right. So what I need to do is when we're asking it to do the first one, GPT-3 completion. So prime the story variable, the prompt. That needs to, I need to update the engine. Engine equals DaVinci Instruct Beta. This is also why you do output, console output as you're going, so that you can see what the heck is going on. But this should have been saved here, so you can just see chunk 001. Ta-da, there it is. But you can see that this is ludicrously similar to the premise that we wrote. Tensions are high in the city as a string of murders have the populace on edge. The city was on edge. A string of murders had the populace on edge. Yeah, that's dumb. Yeah, OpenAI, you need to work on the creative output of your beta, or sorry, of your Instruct series. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Now, all right, so let's clear that out. Let's try this again. Whoops. CLS, Python, write novel. And it'll take a minute. Come on. You can do it. Wake up and pour coffee on the computer. I wonder if that would help. Oh, here we go. Okay. It tried to write quite a bit. Chunk 01. It wrote a lot of very short chapters. That was dumb. Length 2800. That's a lot. Why did it write so much? Whatever. Let's just let it go. The end. Story link. I don't think this is working. Error community. It's still being loaded. All right, so let's look at the most recent GPT-3 logs to see what the heck is going on. Prompt. Outline. Tensions are high. Story so far. Last chunk. The police did this. Next chunk, the police were in a panic. Okay. The city was finally safe again. Yeah, so I don't think this works. That's fine. We can always try again. Actually, I think all I need to do is just add a chapter as a stop. So we'll do that too. Okay. Let's see how it's going. Yeah, now it's just... it's just doing its own thing. The case of the stolen scores. All right, let's stop this. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. Okay, so since we did this, let's add chapter 2 as a stop. under write novel, so we need to make sure that it doesn't just like zoom ahead. Fine-tune completion, chapter 2. Actually, we'll just do chapter 2, just in case that shows up. And then we'll also do this here under GPT-3 completion. Okay, so it does switch back to that. All right, so basically what we have to do here is kind of do a little bit of detective work of our own and go back through and say, okay, so we've got the last 5 GPT-3 completions or so. Well, I guess there's going to be some hidden in the background because we did summaries. So starting at 7:30. So let's open these. Prompt, premise, tensions are high, write a novel for the above. The police were unsettled. In the end, the detective is able to solve the case and apprehend the killer. Okay, so it tried to write too much. How much was this? The selection, 1,100 characters. That's fine, but it went way, way longer than I wanted it to. How long was the... Oh, tokens 1,000. There's part of our problem. Let's shorten that. See, like I said, one of the problems is you don't want GPT-3 to just take the reins because it'll just keep going. So this is not what I wanted it to do. Okay, so let's go back to our prompt first. Write the first chapter for the above novel. Chapter 1. Okay, so if we change that, it's just write the first thing and then stop. It should be able to handle that a little bit better. I forgot. So here's one thing: is when you let's plug this in. So Instruct Beta is not as good at stopping as the later models are. So we've got to be a little bit more careful with the stops. And so you saw how like this was good. Maximum length, I think this original maximum length was 256. So let's just say 300 because we want more like this where it gives us good, rich prose. Okay, temperature 7, maximum length 300. Okay. That seems okay. Temperature 07, maximum length 300. Let's see if this works. And then we'll just switch to chapter as the stop for both of them, just in case it tries to inject more chapters. Okay, so chapter. And then chapter. Okay, so basically what we've done is it was completely botched from the beginning, from the outset. Because if you look here, the very first prompt, which was the opening thing, it just tried to write a lot of chapters. In the end, the detective is able to solve the case and apprehend the killer. It's not actually telling us a story. It started as a story, right? It started as like, this could be some decent opening prose. But because this is not fine-tuned to generate, the opening of a story. And honestly, like you could have an entire model fine-tuned on story openings, cold openings. That's actually not a bad idea. Let me do a time check. We're at 44 minutes. Ugh. Okay, well, we're almost done. Almost done, I promise. We'll see how far we get. And maybe there needs to be a 5th video. Okay, so let's go here. Let's delete the chunks. And let's do Python, or here, let's do CLS, Python write novel. And lights, camera, action. Let's see what happens. All right, we get some dialogue, so that's good. The city was tense. It had been for weeks. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, that's more like it. That's more like it. Chunk 2. He heard the sound of a woman's sobbing. Oh, yes, it's working. It's working. It's working. Deep reference. Also, that ages me. Excuse me, miss. I'm his wife. This is my husband. It was a .38 revolver, said the wife. It was black with a long barrel and a dull finish. It was the ugliest gun I've ever seen. This is good. This is working. It's actually doing a thing. Okay. Yes. Oh, man. You think somebody else did it? I think so, said the detective. With a large bay window and hardwood floors. You guys, I did it. It works. It works. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, I'm going to let this finish. And then I'm going to upload this and the video's done and y'all can read this story. I'm just going to savor this victory because, like, yeah. And, well, okay, so while it's running, I will say that I cannot take full credit for this because first I posted about this idea on OpenAI on the community. And a few folks, they used my original code, AutoMuse1, and they started talking about it. And someone came back and asked some questions. And they're like, what if you did this? And that really kind of got the gears turning. And so I was like, ooh, brilliant. I'm going to try that. And then also a bunch of you have been adding comments as we go. Okay. This is going to take a minute to run. It's working. You can see that it works. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. You can go check out the output yourself. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this is done. I think the fine-tuned model works, and we can generate novels on the fly. Hell yeah.